5 brutal truths about life after 80 with some simple solutions that can help. What if I told you that everything you think you know about turning 80 is probably wrong? Most people imagine their golden years filled with grandchildren visiting, peaceful retirement, and wisdom-filled conversations with lifelong friends. But here's the shocking truth that nobody wants to talk about. Life after 80 can be one of the loneliest, most isolating experiences a human being can face. And today, I'm going to share 5 brutal realities about aging loneliness that every senior must understand, because ignoring them could destroy what should be the most meaningful years of your life. Before we begin discussing these harsh truths, let me ask you something. How many people over 80 do you actually know personally? Not just see at the grocery store or wave to from across the street, but really know. If you're like most people, the answer is probably very few, and that right there is part of the problem we're about to explore. This is a tough subject to write about, but we want to know about your story and your feelings on this topic. Please tell us in the comments below. Let's start with the first brutal reality, and this one hits like a punch to the gut. Reality number 1. Your social circle doesn't just shrink after 80, it collapses. And I mean catastrophically collapses. Think about it this way. By the time you reach 80, you've likely outlived many of your closest friends. The people you went to school with, worked alongside for decades, shared life's biggest moments with, they start disappearing one by one. It's not just death, though, that's certainly part of it. It's also illness, disability, memory loss, and families moving people into care facilities far from their original communities. Here's what researchers have found that will blow your mind. The average 80-year-old has lost approximately 70% of their peer social network compared to when they were 60. Imagine if 7 out of every 10 people you currently talk to regularly just vanished from your life. That's the reality facing millions of seniors right now. But before we get into the solutions, here's where it gets even more devastating. Unlike younger people who can easily make new friends through work, school, or shared activities, seniors face what sociologists call the friendship formation barrier. Making new meaningful relationships becomes exponentially harder as we age, not just because of physical limitations, but because of something called social scripting. We lose the natural environments and social cues that help us connect with others. One 83-year-old woman I interviewed, let's call her Lynette, told me something that still gives me chills. She said, "I wake up every morning and realize I have no one to call who would actually want to hear from me. My husband is gone, my best friend moved to assisted living 3 states away, and my children are so busy with their own lives that I feel like a burden every time I reach out." Lynette isn't unusual. She represents millions of seniors living this exact same nightmare. This brings us to the second brutal reality, and this one might be the most heartbreaking of all. Reality number 2. Your own family becomes increasingly distant, and it's not entirely their fault. Now, before you get angry at me for saying this, hear me out. This isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about understanding a painful truth that affects millions of families. Here's what happens. Your adult children are typically in their 50s and 60s when you hit 80. They're dealing with their own aging processes, their own health concerns, their own relationship challenges. Many are still supporting their own children or even grandchildren. They're squeezed from both directions in what experts call the sandwich generation effect. But there's something even more insidious happening. As you age, your children start seeing you differently. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but psychologically. They begin to view you less as the strong, independent person who raised them, and more as someone who needs to be managed or taken care of. This shift, which psychologists call role reversal anxiety, creates emotional distance even when everyone has the best intentions. I talked to a 78-year-old man whose daughter visits once a week religiously. Sounds great, right? But listen to what he told me. She comes over, checks that I'm taking my medications, asks if I need anything from the store, stays for maybe an hour, and leaves. We barely have a real conversation anymore. I feel like I've become her weekly obligation, not her father. The statistics back this up in devastating detail. Research shows that meaningful conversation time between seniors and their adult children drops by an average of 45% after the senior turns 80. 45%. These aren't neglectful families we're talking about. These are loving families who are unconsciously creating emotional distance because they don't know how else to cope with their aging parent. And here's the kicker. Many seniors start pulling back too. They don't want to be seen as needy or burdensome, so they stop sharing their real feelings, their fears, their loneliness. They put on a brave face during those visits, saying everything is fine, while inside they're dying for genuine human connection. This leads us directly into the third brutal reality, and this one reveals why traditional solutions don't work. Reality number 3. The activities and social opportunities designed for seniors often increase loneliness rather than decrease it. This sounds counterintuitive, but stay with me because this insight could change everything for you or someone you care about. Most communities offer senior centers, bingo games, craft activities, group meals. Sounds wonderful, right? Here's the problem. These activities are often designed by people who have never experienced the specific type of loneliness that comes with being over 80. They're based on assumptions about what seniors want rather than understanding what they actually need. The real issue is that surface-level social activities don't address the core problem of aging loneliness, which is the loss of meaningful, intimate connections. Playing bingo with strangers twice a week doesn't replace the deep friendship you had with your college roommate for 60 years. Craft time at the senior center doesn't fill the void left by a spouse who understood your thoughts before you even spoke them. One 81-year-old man I spoke with put it perfectly. He said, "I go to the senior center because everyone says I should socialize. But I sit in a room full of people I barely know, doing activities that feel meaningless to me, and I feel more alone than when I'm sitting by myself at home. At least at home, I'm not pretending to be having fun." This phenomenon has a name in gerontology research. It's called social loneliness versus emotional loneliness. Social loneliness is about the quantity of social contacts. Emotional loneliness is about the quality and depth of those relationships. Most programs for seniors address social loneliness while completely ignoring emotional loneliness, which is actually the more devastating of the two. Here's what makes this even worse. Many seniors try these programs, find them unfulfilling, and then conclude that they're just destined to be lonely. They give up trying to connect with others, which accelerates their isolation. It becomes a vicious cycle that's incredibly difficult to break. The fourth brutal reality is going to challenge everything you think you know about independence and aging. Reality number 4. The fierce independence that helped you succeed in life becomes your greatest enemy after 80. This is perhaps the most difficult truth for successful, accomplished people to accept, but it's absolutely critical to understand. Throughout your life, Independence, self-reliance, and not needing others were probably virtues that served you well. You built careers, raised families, solved problems on your own. You took pride in being the person others could depend on, not the person who needed to depend on others. But after 80, this same mindset becomes a prison that locks you away from the human connections you desperately need. Here's what happens. When you're over 80 and struggling with loneliness, your first instinct is often to handle it the same way you handled other life challenges, independently. You tell yourself you should be able to overcome this on your own. You feel ashamed about needing others. You worry about being seen as weak or needy, so you suffer in silence, convinced that asking for help or admitting loneliness is somehow a personal failure. In an interview with an 84-year-old retired CEO who hadn't spoken to another human being in 4 days when we talked, told me he was a man who once managed hundreds of employees, made million-dollar decisions, and was sought out for his wisdom and leadership. But he told me, "I built my whole life on being strong and independent. I don't know how to be the person who needs help. I'd rather be alone than admit I can't handle this." The research on this is absolutely devastating. Studies show that seniors who maintain rigid independence mindsets experience loneliness rates that are 3 times higher than those who learn to accept interdependence. 3 times higher. But here's the cruel irony. The very qualities that made these individuals successful earlier in life make it nearly impossible for them to adapt to the reality of aging. This independence trap is made worse by societal messages that constantly reinforce the idea that needing others is somehow a failure. We celebrate aging in place, maintaining independence, not being a burden. All of these messages, while well-intentioned, actually contribute to the isolation crisis facing seniors today. But the fifth and final brutal reality is the one that ties everything together, and it's the one that offers the most hope for change. Reality number 5. Society is abandoning you emotionally, but most people don't even realize it is happening. This isn't about intentional cruelty or deliberate neglect. It's about something much more subtle and pervasive that affects how we all think about and interact with people over 80. Our culture has developed what I call aging invisibility syndrome. Once people reach a certain age, they become less visible in our collective consciousness. They're not part of the workforce. They're not consuming in the same ways. They're not on social media creating content or driving cultural trends. They slowly fade from society's active attention, not because anyone wants them to, but because our systems and structures aren't designed to keep them engaged. Think about it this way. When was the last time you saw a movie or TV show where the main character was over 80 and dealing with real-life challenges like loneliness? When was the last time you saw an advertisement that spoke directly to the emotional needs of seniors rather than just trying to sell them the latest drug or financial products? When was the last time you heard a news story about the loneliness epidemic among seniors that didn't just focus on statistics, but actually gave you insight into what it feels like to live through it? The absence of these representations sends a clear message to seniors. Your experiences, your struggles, your need for connection don't matter as much as those of younger generations. And here's the devastating part. Many seniors internalize this message. They begin to believe that their loneliness is just a natural part of aging that they should accept quietly. But here's where this gets even more complex. The same societal changes that have created more opportunities and freedoms for younger generations have inadvertently made life more isolating for seniors. Families are more geographically dispersed than ever before. Communities are less tight-knit. Technology, which was supposed to connect us all, has actually created new forms of exclusion for those who can't or don't adapt to it quickly enough. I spoke with an 82-year-old grandmother who told me, "My grandchildren live across the country, and when they visit, they're constantly looking at their phones. When I try to start a conversation, they answer without looking up. I feel like I'm invisible even when I'm sitting right next to them." This isn't about judging the grandchildren. They're products of their environment just like everyone else. But it illustrates how societal changes have created new barriers to intergenerational connection. Now, here's what I want you to understand about all five of these brutal realities. They're not inevitable. They're not just natural parts of aging that we have to accept. They're problems created by how our society has structured itself, and that means they're problems we can solve. The first step is awareness. If you're approaching 80 or you have loved ones who are, understanding these realities can help you prepare for them and find ways to counteract them. If you're younger, understanding these realities can help you build the kinds of relationships and support systems that will serve you better as you age. But more importantly, understanding these realities can help you see the seniors in your life differently. That elderly neighbor who seems grumpy or withdrawn might not be antisocial. They might be desperately lonely and not know how to express it. That grandparent who calls more often than you'd like might not be clingy. They might be fighting against social isolation with the only tools they have. The solution isn't simple, but it's not impossible either. It starts with recognizing that meaningful connection requires intentional effort, especially as we age. It means being willing to be vulnerable, to admit when we need others, to ask for help in building and maintaining relationships. It means creating new models for aging that prioritize emotional well-being alongside physical health. For those of you watching who are younger, it means starting now to build the kinds of deep, meaningful relationships that can withstand the challenges of aging. It means staying connected with your older relatives and friends, not just out of obligation, but out of genuine interest in their experiences and wisdom. For those of you watching who are already experiencing some of these realities, it means understanding that your loneliness is not a personal failure or a character flaw. It's a response to real societal problems that require real solutions. It means being willing to take small risks in reaching out to others, even when your independence-focused mindset tells you not to. The truth is, we're all going to face these challenges eventually, if we're lucky enough to live that long, and that means we all have a stake in solving them. The 80-year-old struggling with loneliness today is showing us what our future might look like if we don't start making changes now. So here's my challenge to you. Don't let this video just be another piece of content you consume and forget. If you have older people in your life, reach out to them this week. Not to check on their medication or ask if they need anything from the store, but to have a real conversation about something they care about. Ask them to tell you a story from their past. Share something meaningful from your own life. Treat them like the full, complex human beings they still are, not like elderly people who need to be managed. And if you're older yourself, consider this your permission to stop trying to handle everything alone. Loneliness after 80 isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're human and that you've lived long enough to experience one of the most difficult challenges our society creates for aging people. The realities of aging loneliness are real, but they don't have to be permanent. By understanding them, talking about them, and working together to address them, we can create a different future for all of us. Because ultimately, learning to age with connection rather than isolation isn't just about helping seniors. It's about building the kind of society we all want to grow old in. I know this video is difficult, but it is real. Tell me your story. Are you on this journey, or do you know someone who is? This is what being vulnerable looks like. Open up and let us know in the comments below. And thanks for watching the Dr. Forever Healthy channel. Please note that we post new videos weekly.